Job chapter 1. All right. Job chapter number 1. All right, last time, back over to my paper. Last time we covered the first disasters, looking at our analysis paper. We're still under the first test, and then today we're going to get into, pick up here at Job's first reactions. And we'll start with Job chapter 1 and verse number 20. So then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell down upon the ground and worshipped. So this is one of the greatest verses in the Bible to consider because Job didn't curse God foolishly or even question him. What did he do instead? He worshiped. So all this stuff has happened to him. We went over the oxen, the asses, the camels. I feel like I'm forgetting one. And then his children. I am forgetting something. But he lost his wealth and he lost all of his kids. And he recognizes something very interesting. He still worships God even though all these bad things are happening. So back in this day, you know, if they lived right, if they lived good lives, we'll say behaved as a Christian for us, then God will bless them. And so Job here, he's suffering, he's losing practically everything. He's still got a little bit to hang on to at this point. But in the midst of all that, what does he do? He worships God. And that's a good example for us here in the church age, for the Christian, to make application that when bad things happen, you know, God's still God. God's still worthy to be worshipped. He's still kind. He's still loving. He's still Him. You know, we get kind of what's the word? Everything is about us. We get kind of focused on ourselves, and the world around us that pertains to us, we think is all that there is sometimes. We forget to recognize that we're not that big a deal when it comes to the grand scheme of things, but God is. You know, and just because some little storm came through this neck of the woods, we think that changes things for some reason, but it doesn't. It just means that we're going through something, and likely nobody else is. And everybody else is still living their everyday life, and like Brother Tom was talking about this morning, they're still hanging on to not just joy, but they even have happiness because they're not going through anything. Life is peachy keen. And here Job is, he's suffering terribly. And what does he choose to do? He's still worshiping the Lord. He's doing what he did before. And I taught a lesson one time on Daniel, talking about if all these bad things that the political preachers say happens here in the U.S. and the vote goes wrong and everything, which is really stupid anyway. But if all these bad things and the communists took over or the Islamic terrorists took over the country or whatever, what does that really matter? Yeah, it gets uncomfortable. It gets difficult if something like that were to happen. But in the end, does it change God? In the end, does it change that we are saved? In the end, does it change that His Word is true? No. We can still find joy no matter what state we are in therewith to be content. So Job, he's found himself in that place and he's still worshiping. Job let go of the down here and he clave to the Lord. And if we can do that, we can go through anything. It doesn't matter what it is. If we can let go of self, let go of things, let go of family, let go of wealth, whatever it is, and just cling to the Lord, we have it. We have it beat. We we have everything in this life conquered because he is really all that matters, no matter what else comes. So it mentions there that Job shaved his head. We won't run to the references, but in Jeremiah 7:25-29, this is Job, and we mentioned how Job is a picture of the Jew going through the tribulation, and so that's a picture of that. It's going to happen to the Jew. Yeah, it's a picture of the tribulation saint, and when you go over there to Jeremiah, you'll see that. Verse number 21. And then here's what Job says as he's falling down on the ground and worshiping. And he said, "Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." So we come into this world with nothing, and we're definitely going out with nothing. The world's philosophy is he who dies with the most toys wins. And so when we die, there's something interesting about that. When my elders and other people in my life have died and went on, their life is over, well, they go out of here with nothing. They don't take anything with them. Their legacy doesn't matter. They're gone. They've handed over whatever they amassed, whatever they saved up, whatever they collected, whatever. They've just handed it off to somebody else, and somebody else is going to take it over. And that's probably the best that it can be, is just something for somebody else. That's all you can get with it. So the toys don't matter. I'm not a millionaire. I don't think anybody here is a millionaire. So good, because our millions are not going with us if we had them. And I've noticed something about people that gain wealth, that gain money, that gain things, tends to consume them. They get worried about it. They have to take care of it. They have to maintain it. They got to spend certain things to avoid paying taxes. They got to worry about all this other stuff that goes with just having wealth, and the things that wealth gets them. Well, they got to maintain that. They got to keep that up. If we get more toys, well, guess what? It requires more time to keep that toy up, to take care of that thing. That's why all these storage buildings are going up everywhere, because we got so much garbage in our lives that we don't even have room to keep it all. So we have to have somewhere else to put it. And what's the point in having it if you got to put it somewhere where you can't even get to it when you need it? You just have junk, and it gets a hold of your heart. So all the time and effort spent in getting the wealth, the things, and maintaining it and safeguarding it is wasted. Let's go to Luke, I believe. I think that's a 1. Let's go to Luke 12:15. Just hold your place here. We'll be back. I want you to see this one. Luke 12, verse number 15. Yeah, this is it. And he said unto them, "Take heed and beware of covetousness." So what is a good example of covetousness? Window shopping. Now we can do it on our phones. We don't have to go to the windows. We got a little piece of glass in our hand that we can look in. For a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. So maybe somebody down the street has this really big house and lots of land and all of the things and the toys that goes with that. Well, it says here, a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. So what's that say about all that wealth? It doesn't matter. And sometimes I think about people I've known over the years and that they have had wealth, and then I look at even Christian folks that have, and what do they do with it? And wonderful, you got money, you got things, and if you need something, you can get it. But then you have all this money, and you're having to spend money to keep from having to pay taxes on money, and you're just having to circulate money because you just have an overabundance of money. But then we got that Christian, a wealthy Christian, you know of people on the mission field or other churches that could really use the money. But no, you're too worried about buying your new thing, amassing your stuff, keeping it to yourself, and it has a hold of your heart. That's the danger of having things. That's the danger of having money in our lives that we don't necessarily need. It gets a hold of us. And so I thought that was a really good verse. The Lord gave and the Lord hath taken away. So in Job's case here, it wasn't the devil. The devil showed up. The devil did it. The devil was the tool. He was the channel that the Lord used. The world didn't give us anything. The Lord gave it to you. And the devil or the world didn't take it from you. The Lord took it from you. So when things happen in our lives, when Miriam wrecks her car, somebody else's fault, and it gets totaled, and she just spent over $4,000 on it, the Lord took it away. It wasn't that the devil showed, and I've been guilty of that over the years. The devil did this or the devil did that because I think I'm so important that good and evil revolves around what I think. Good and evil revolves around what affects me, and it doesn't. You know, everything, just like we see here in Job's life, he's suffering far more severe than I have, and it's all the Lord's fault. Why? The Lord okayed it. The devil couldn't do a thing until he got permission from the Lord. So what do we have to do? You know, we sometimes things happen to us or we get mad, or we get kind of bitter, and we get whatever negative way we think, because we get out of perspective with who we are and what we are in relation to God. We lose our understanding, and then we get to thinking more of ourselves than we should, and then we get mad about our situation or our circumstances. Well, take it up with the Lord, because he okayed it. He okayed your car to get destroyed. Now you have a car payment. He okayed that. But here, check this out. After that happened, she loses the money in the car. Well, she gets pretty much that much money back out of it. Now she has a car payment, which isn't fun. But guess what the Lord did after that? Gave her quite a nice promotion. And it doesn't always work that way, but we got to be careful not to get mad, not to get bitter in the things that the Lord allows in our lives. So sometimes the Lord, he might take our health. And so talk to him about it. And why ask the Lord? Well, Lord, what do you want out of this? What to ask the Lord? What do you want out of this? So when things happen in our lives, they're always happening for a reason. The Lord doesn't just do stuff on whim for the sake of having something to do. He's not that bored. He's got plenty to do. He's got plenty going on, and he has a purpose in everything that he does. So what we need to try to find out, try to recognize, why is this happening? Lord, what are you trying to tell me? Why are you trying to remove this from my life? Is this something that had a place in my heart and I needed to get rid of it? Is this something that you've given me? Paul had a thorn in the flesh to keep him humble. Job, he's not doing anything wrong, but he's suffering very much. He's suffering terribly. And so Job didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. And most of the time, neither do we. But what we can ask is, what does the Lord want to do with it in our lives? What does he need us to learn from it? So God let the devil get at him, and then what's the result? And that's what matters. The result is God's glory. That's all that matters. So when things happen to us, when Brother Tom talking about things, bad things and negative things happen in our lives, if we take it correctly, we'll maintain that joy. If we keep perspective on us, our understanding in the place where it should be, and we keep perspective that God is still who he is. God is still the God that can do whatever he wants. Whether it's negative things in our life or good things, it has a purpose. And it is a scary thing to think about sometimes. If the Lord sees fit that doing something really bad to me or my life will bring him glory or accomplish his will, I need to be okay with that. Because that's what really matters. It's the Lord. He is what matters. And we got to keep things in perspective. We shouldn't be looking for a way to blame someone or something else. Then we would be like our father Adam. He was real quick to toss the blame on Eve. And so he didn't say, against thee and thee only have I sinned, like David did, or I'm sorry, Lord. But then when we look at Job, Job had the right response. Okay, look at verse number 22. In all this, Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. So the devil did it and took it away. But Job wasn't wrong in saying the Lord took it away, because God permitted it. God is what matters. We're going out of this world naked, without money, comfort, kids, spouse, nothing. We're leaving this world with nothing. So now what do? That boils it down real nice to what's the point in this life then? And to give God pleasure. Let's see. Let's go to 1 John chapter number 2. Let's go look at that one. Flip too far. All right, 1 John chapter number 2. We'll look at verses 15 to 17. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof. But he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. And that's what it's all about, doing the will of the Lord. That has an eternal effect. Trying to keep our minds off of the temporal, off of the here and now, and keep our perspective open in the things that we have to do and interact here in this world, but to keep it in a light of eternity. That's tough. Sometimes we get really distracted down here. Sometimes I see things and, when things aren't going the way I think they should or the way I want them to go, I think, man, I see something else and now it's like, that looks much better. And then that gets your eyes off of the Lord, eyes off of an eternal perspective as you get to looking around. The dying thief, he got here, but Job had to go on and keep digging. So the dying thief, he makes the right choice, and then he goes out of this world. But Job doesn't get to go out of the world. He has to sit here and just deal with it, and just go through it, and just suffer it, and just feel it, and be probably a laughing stock to everybody around him. Everybody's saying Job must be hiding some great sin in his life because of what the Lord's doing to him. He's a mockery, and he is the example of probably all the old ladies in the community are telling the little kids, you see that Job over there? That's what happens to you when you're doing things you shouldn't be doing. And they would have been right to say those things back then, because that's how things worked. But nobody knew about the challenge between God and the devil, and Job was the court they were playing on. Let's see. I don't know if I want to mention that yet. We'll skip that one. Let's go on into the second test, and we're going to start covering some of that. Chapter 2, verse 1. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. Now for the second round, notice the conversation is pretty much the same, except this time God takes a stab at the devil, putting blame on him. and emphasizing that he got beat in round one, creating a more tense atmosphere to the proud loser, and now to up the ante. So as we go through these verses, we'll talk about that. The term sons of God here, I kind of skipped it last time, didn't really want to get into it. But as I was reading some books and another book that had nothing to do with the lesson, I started running across this and another book last night. It came up in that too. But there's some that believe this is referring to a godly line of Seth. And the reason they believe that is it does away with actual angels and giants. And the ones they talk about over there in Genesis 6, verses 1 through 4, they claim these are like Christian men marrying lost women, like Solomon and his pagan wives. So in Job 38 verses 4 through 7, you see the sons of Seth were around when God created the earth. So if you go over there to Job chapter 38, they were there and they sang when God was doing his creation work, if you remember that verse. And if this is a godly line of Seth, then that means men had to be around during creation. And that's just not the case. It's not possible. So this has to be talking about angels. The sons of God is definitely not a godly line of Seth. So the thing they're using the godly line of Seth for goes along with some of that stuff we talked about last week, where they believe that they've replaced Israel and they're following in that same godly line that's been around since Seth was on the face of the earth, and that they're part of it. So they got this kind of an elite opinion of themselves. I guess you could say it's kind of along the lines of a Pharisee or something, but they think that they're something special and that they're the elect and that they follow in those lines. And so they manipulate not only the dating of the book of Job and some of those other things to keep the Jew from showing back up in the tribulation. They also are promoting this godly line so that they can say that they're a part of it and that it continues on. And let's see, there was something else with that. But verses 1 through 3, let's look at those. And verse 2, and the Lord said unto Satan, from whence comest thou? And Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. So that's that. We'll see much more of that later on, but you see there the synonymous parallelism, the Hebrew poetry that's there, says from going to and fro in the earth, then he says the same thing in a different way, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil. So verses 1 through 3, the first half of 3 here, are the same speech as in chapter 1, verses 6 through 8. But then here in the second half of verse 3 it says, and still he holdeth fast his integrity. So there's the thing. The Lord says, and still you're losing. And still Job is loyal to me. And so there's that little poke right there. Still he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest me against him to destroy him without cause. So what did Job just acknowledge a minute ago? He acknowledged that it's the Lord doing all this. But what does the Lord tell the devil? He says, you made me do it. And so not only is he saying Job's winning, but it's your fault, and he's still beating you. And then we see that God adds to Job's virtue and still. So he's been faithful. He's weathering the storm. He's still the champion. And God's adding something that he has observed. He saw the fight. He had the best seats in the house. Job took a beating, but he never went down. And God's saying, I told you so. And that's a pretty big deal. As proud and rebellious and full of himself as the devil is, to stand there before God and God more or less say, I tried to tell you, and you won't listen. And you know that's really got to upset a man. So let's see. I'll save that for later. Okay, and then he says, thou movest me. So Satan did it. And God instigated the fight with Satan. He brought it all up to begin with. Hast thou considered my servant Job? It wasn't even a piece of conversation until God brought it up. And now God's blaming the devil for moving him to do it. So God is taking responsibility for what the devil did and saying the devil instigated God to do it in the first place. So ultimately, God is responsible for everything that happens. He allows it to come your way. And then why? To see how you respond. And then when it's not really for God. It's like when God walked into the garden with Adam and he said, where you at, Adam? And Adam's hiding. Well, God knew exactly where Adam was. He didn't have to ask him. But what is he showing Adam by asking him that? Something's not right, Adam. Why are you hiding from me? He wanted Adam to see that he was hiding. And so a lot of times things will happen in our lives just so we'll respond, and then with our response, it'll reveal something about us. It'll reveal, who knows, some bitterness, maybe some pride. That's usually my case, full of myself. And and then God shows us something through that we need to work on. And so he also says there in that verse, at the end of verse 3 there, without cause. This is in regard to Job's sin. Job is a righteous man. Job is perfect, and God said so. And still, Job retains his God-given title as righteous and perfect. So the devil has moved God without cause on Job to make him suffer for no reason. He didn't deserve it. And the without cause, it's in regard to Job's sin, but God does have a purpose in it. He's not saying nothing about it. He's keeping it to himself. But it says God has a purpose for all this, not just to humiliate the devil, and he could do that anytime, any way he wants to, but God has another purpose that gets revealed later. Job could use some polishing, and it'll help his friends too. It's for Job's good, and not only for Job's good, but it's for the benefit of those around him. So Job's suffering, Job's going through some things, and the devil thinks he's just trying to make him curse God. And the whole time God's using all this. God instigated this, remember. God presented Job to the devil. He started it. And so wouldn't you think he has a plan, a purpose behind all this? God knows exactly what the devil's going to do. God knows how Job's going to respond. So he goes into this whole thing. The devil thinks, sometimes you got to wonder about the devil. I do. Like in this situation, how does he not know that God is right? How does he not know that he's going to get humiliated going up against God? Because he's so full of his pride. He's so full of himself, so rebellious, that he just can't help himself. He thinks he can win this. And then the whole thing, God does it to work on Job. But we won't see that till later in the book. When bad happens, our response should be, God, what is this here for? And how can I please you with it? Because we're created for his pleasure. And so we need to find out how we can please God when the bad things come. And we'll stop right there.